For those of you who don't know me, I'm Joyce Raimondo. I am the education coordinator here at the Pollock House and Study Center in East Hampton. And we have a special guest today, Geralyn Lewandoski, who's a Springs artist and designer and a very close friend of Charles Waller. So today is a really special day because we are going to have a tribute to Charles Waller, who passed away in 2021. And Charles was a very vibrant member of the Springs community. And he was an amazing artist and a friend to many. And so if you didn't know Charles, you will enjoy seeing his work today. And of course, if you knew Charles, we do hope that maybe you'll share some comments at the end. I'm going to start off with a little PowerPoint presentation that I put together to put Charles's work and life in the Springs in the context of the larger community. So today we're going to celebrate the vibrant community of art that's on the east end of Long Island in an area known as the Springs in East Hampton. So I'm going to do a little screen share, and then following, Geralyn will share. Of course, Charles's work, he had an amazing humor in his work and a very subtle wit. And we will see that later as we progress through this talk. And so we are located, the Pollock-Krasner House and Study Center, which is the home of Jackson Pollock and Lee Krasner, is located in the Springs. So we're part of East Hampton, but if you come to the town, we're north of the windmill. And this area has been a haven for artists for many, many years. Of course, artists started to come to the area known as the Hamptons as soon as the Long Island Railroad could bring artists out here. And hang on. So what we see here, artists assembling on the beach in 1962. This is taken by the famous photographer Hans Namath, who also photographed Pollock. And many, many artists historically have gathered here. And what's beautiful is that this continues today with artists enjoying the community as well as the beach itself. So here we have Charles Waller at the Sandcastle contest in Amiganza, which takes place yearly, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. And there is Charles doing his sculpture on the lower left.
With Jeff Meese.
And who is he with?
And Tim Lee is in that.
And Tim Lee is in the photograph on the right. And the other man with Charles is Jeff Meese. Here we have Jackson Pollock on the left and Lee Krasner to the far right, with the famous critic Clement Greenberg, who promoted Pollock's abstract expressionism. And of course, Helen Frankenthaler, who also did poured painting, who was at that time the girlfriend of Clement Greenberg. And there's many, many historic photos of artists on the beach. I'm happy to say that we still, those of us who live here today, of course, we still enjoy these gatherings. So here's our famous couple, Lee and Pollock. Moved here in 1945, bought the house in 1946. And they purchased the property in the Springs with a loan from Peggy Guggenheim, the art patron, who gave Pollock a monthly stipend. So Pollock begins to do his drip paintings, laying them on the floor of the studio. Lee manages his career, and Pollock is one of the first artists from the abstract expressionists to rise to fame during his lifetime. And the others followed. So here's Life magazine, 1949. Is he the greatest living painter in the United States? Now, sadly, Pollock dies in 1956 at the age of 44. He crashed his car in Springs Fireplace Road. He was drinking and driving. And Lee Krasner takes over the studio after his death and continues to live and work here for the rest of her life. Lee always painted while he was alive. She painted in a small room upstairs in the house, but she did not promote her career as an artist while Pollock was alive. And of course, many of the artists who live here, they capture nature in various ways. In Pollock and Krasner's work, they're working from within. right? Its nature is within. And often also it's inspired by music as well. Here's the famous couple, Elaine and Willem de Kooning, were friends with the Pollocks. They also sometimes had a friendly rivalry. On the left is Willem de Kooning's studio, which is still intact. However, it is not a public site. And on the right is Elaine's studio, which is in East Hampton. Neither of these artists are with us today, but Elaine's studio in East Hampton is privately owned, and sometimes I think the owner's name is Chris Burns. He does invite artists to do residencies in her magnificent studio. And that's what I'm so proud of, that the Springs community, many of these historic sites have been made into community art centers so that the arts can thrive today. So John Little was a friend of Pollock's who worked on Squaw Road right down the street. And we see that his barn studio pictured in the background there is now Duck Creek, which is a thriving art center that hosts these magnificent jazz concerts throughout the summer, as well as exhibitions. If you are an artist, you might want to check out their exhibition program. You can apply to show your work there. So what creates community, which is basically what we're talking about today? Well, obviously people create community, but people also need places to gather. So I love the Springs General Store. It's right down the street from the Pollock House. And for years, it's been a gathering place for artists. Here's Pollock, Lee Krasner, and the sculptor Nivola on the right. And on the left is Dan Miller, the owner, who the famous story, he bought Pollock's painting. Pollock traded it for groceries, and later on he sold it to the Pompidou, which was enough money to put his children through college. So here we have Oswald Hall. Oh, and by the way, of course, Geralyn told me Charles used to go to the Springs store every day, right,
Get
Geralyn?
coffee on the porch, yes.
And often I would see him there and we would chit chat, and it's just a great place to go. So here's Oswald Hall, which if you live in the area, you're familiar with, a thriving community center where it hosts art exhibitions that are driven by artists who apply to show work, either in a group or individually. But I love this photo from 1955. These artists are outside of Oswald Hall having an art raffle. There's a famous photo of Pollock with his art pinned to a fence outside of Oswald Hall, selling his print for $50. So don't you wish you could go back in time?
Yes.
And
I $60.
Yeah. So Geralyn, of course, today she hosts art raffles and she donates the proceeds. And here's two exhibition posters from Oswald Hall. Springs Artists Exhibition still takes place today, right? Where we highlight some of the artists in the community. And here's a beautiful picture of Charles Waller, Geralyn Lewandoski, and David Geiser. And this picture was taken at Art Groove, which Geralyn hosts every year, bringing together artists, musicians, art raffle to donate the proceeds to various organizations. It's a lot of fun. It was postponed because of COVID, but it might be coming back. So we look forward to that possibility.
We might have it again this year.
Yeah, it might.
Although that's not 2009, that would be more like 2015. But
Okay. Okay. Now I am so pleased to introduce my friend and neighbor, Geralyn Lewandoski, who is one of the most generous people I know. And when we're talking about community, Geralyn is an example of creating community with art. Always has a big heart, and she was very, very close with Charles. So we're going to hear from Geralyn.
Well, what I would really love to say is I know how honored Charles would feel to have his artwork being presented to everyone on Zoom at the Pollock-Krasner house. This is one of the, wonderful things an artist could hope for. And I know he's smiling down at us and he's very happy. And I hope you enjoy the slide presentation that I put together and take it from there.
Aw, thank you, Geralyn.
So this is the tribute to Charles Waller. Speak a little loud. Charles was a wonderful person and a gifted and prolific artist. He had a great sense of humor and always a twinkle in his eye.
Try to talk a little louder.
We were partners for a while, but great friends forever. Charles started drawing at the age of 7. He later attended the Royal Academy of Art in London, where he studied illustration. He then went on to the Rhode Island School of Design, where he graduated. He quickly became an accomplished illustrator early on in his career. His first job was with the Boston Globe, but then he transitioned shortly thereafter to the New York Times. Charles literally created thousands of illustrations over the course of his lifetime. His client list, as you can see, represents the who's who of corporate America, media, publishing, advertising, hundreds of companies where his illustrations could be seen. And he made a very good living making these illustrations. They always had sort of a little bit of humor to them, which is certainly evident in his personality. Then came a point when Charles wanted to expand his technique, so he moved into creating assemblages, or let's say 3D illustrations from a variety of materials. This was most likely his initial transition from commercial art into fine art. He was given an assignment by Print Magazine to create a cover concept. This was what he came up with. This also launched a series called Mania. Charles often worked he also created groups of work that were a series that would be defined by either the material he used or a concept he had, or both. His first series debuted at the Morgan Rank Gallery, which was in East Hampton on the corner of Newtown Lane and Main Street. He found most of his stuff through flea markets, or even stuff that he brought from England at the Portobello Market, where he used to go all the time, because he was fascinated by antiques and vintage pieces of work. This piece was created when he found the handle of the shovel. It's filled with actual coffee beans. And as you can see, there's coffee cans in the background, and just really a beautiful piece. This piece is called Boner, and it's made of pieces of metal. It sort of has, a feeling of dance and almost a vaudeville theme to it. Another piece in the series was called Burnout. Charles really had really loved working with these ceiling tiles. They're tin ceiling tiles that you'll see throughout, many pieces that he created in this series and also other series. This one, the story goes that he went to several hardware stores in the area and bought out all the mouse traps. So he tells that story of making this money mouse, obviously on Mickey Mouse. And this Absolute piece, I believe, was an actual ad for Absolute. If you recall the time in the city where Absolute was hiring many different artists to do their, actually it was the bus shelters, had all these beautiful executions of with their Absolute vodka. And again, the ceiling tiles. And then these slats that are taken from the beach snow fences was another thing that Charles loved to work with. His next series was called Show Dogs. This was wildly successful. In many cases, people were like double bidding on a piece, and there's actually somebody who was upset because they didn't get the piece that they thought they were going to buy. So this series goes from this called Man's Best Friend, and there's Charles. Salty Dog, my favorite. There's an interesting story here where there was an accident of a car ending up on a boat in 3 Mile Marina. It's now called Maidstone. And Charles was given this life ring. So upon just with his idea of this life ring, he came up with this Salty Dog. And of course, who better could have this piece than me, because we sailed together. Dog Pie, I think this was Charles's favorite. He always had this close to him. Dogmatic, here you could see where he used different clock gears and pieces like that. Again, on the beach slats in the background, another material that he liked to work with. Hound Dog, I mean, how great is that? That's you know, a play on Elvis, and I believe this is actual music from Elvis. He then also started doing these rivets with tacks. Dog Eat Dog. Charles had many well-known collectors, including Donna Karan, Kirk Douglas, Ronald Reagan, and even Alfred Hitchcock. Last one here, the Dog House. So the next theme he worked with was tattoo parlor. He was inspired by Norman Collins, who was also known as Sailor Jerry, very famous tattoo artist. There's books out on him if you were interested in tattoos. This is just a little preview of the show, again at Morgan Rank Gallery. And these are just some of the pieces that that were presented at that show. Child, Gentle Giant, Lucky, and then the Urban Warrior, where he then started to use license plates. It's just amazing play on the different textures of this piece. And then him drawing on the face. He just kept always evolving and expanding his technique. So one of his most popular series was the Bridal Suite. Charles ran this ad in the East Hampton Star, and which was, of course, sort of a tribute to his sense of humor. He started this when he found several Victorian wedding dresses at this place called Brimfield, which is a huge flea market in Western Massachusetts. He would go there a few times a year, and I went there a couple of times with him. This series really has, you know, a feeling of movement, but stillness. The pieces actually look like they're floating off the panel. So they are basically collage dresses over wooden panel. They're quite large, about 4 feet by 6.5 feet. It also sort of speaks to the commentary, you know, of marriage being, you know, the magnitude of it, and also the fragility of marriage. So he went from his bright, he went from pastel colors to these bright colors, green with envy, also sort of tongue-in-cheek there, and then blush. Ball and Chain, of course, another sort of some of Charles Waller wit. We're going to try to let somebody in here, so just hang with me a minute, please. Okay. This is a diptych, really large. It's 8 feet across by 6.5 feet high. And this is a beautiful piece. Now, it's on exhibit right now at the White Room Gallery in Bridgehampton. Another series that was really popular was what he called the Bone series. And this he created because of his fascination with scrimshaw. So this particular piece is his classic crosshatch technique on real bone. Yep, that is a giraffe hip bone. Amazing, isn't it? Now this one is really outstanding. This is a bison jaw, if you can believe that. And look at how beautiful that is. Just so impressive. This is one of my favorites, although it's not on a bone. It's just this beautiful illustration on a small violin. This is a wild boar tusk, and it's called Wild Boar. Another one of my favorites, of course, is Wind. Charles spent so much time on my sailboat with me. And in the end, he actually became a pretty decent sailor, but this is just so close to my heart. Here is Brokeback Prairie, which of course is on a cow skull. Sorry about that for the cow. And with his classic sense of humor here, Dollars and Nonsense, also on exhibit at the White Room Gallery right now. Drawings on vintage Parisian mannequin. His next series was inspired by our trip to Tortola and the BVI in 2015. We sailed to Norman Island and got on this ship that's basically a decommissioned tanker called the Willie T, named after William Thornton, who was an architect that was born on Jos van Dyke, I believe. On this boat, there was all kinds of interesting carvings and pirate sayings and graffiti, and Charles just loved it. He was so inspired that he created a series when we returned and dedicated this piece to me. The following here, again with the beach slats and his signature sort of hammered out metal pieces. Of course, there's his little sense of humor there with the Jolly Roger and his gay pirate theme, because we also met a series of on a regatta, people sailing around with us. So the next series was called Communique, and this one was inspired by his discovery of a batch of love letters written by an American sailor to a young English woman who he called Toots. This lady later became his wife. So these are like, the covers of the letters. This is in the background. He just copied stamps and envelopes. And again, here's the stamps that he would then draw on top of. And these are the actual letters that he found at Brimfield and inspired this series. Now this was probably one of Charles's largest drawings. It was 8 feet wide, and he was with collaged vintage seed packets. When Charles would come back from working on this piece, I believe it was about 2012 or 13, he said he thought he was going to go blind, and you can see why. But again, it's his signature crosshatch. He continued by drawing on this background is of vintage matchbook covers. So this has a theme sort of a gentleman's club with the cigar the pipe, martini. And that's Charles Waller, and just a brief glimpse of his art and his creations. Although he's no longer with us, his spirit does live on in our hearts. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation, and I want to thank Joyce for making it all possible. If you're interested in more about Charles and more of the press coverage on him, this book is available on Amazon, or you can get it at the White Room Gallery, or you can email me and I'll get you a copy. This is the show currently on view in Bridgehampton at the White Room Gallery. It's featuring about 18 pieces of Charles's work, and they're only open at this time on Saturday and Sunday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. So if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend that you do. Thank you for your time, and it was great sharing with you.
Everybody,
Thank you, Geralyn.
let's give Geralyn a beautiful thank you and a Zoom round of applause.
Absolutely. That was wonderful.
That was, Geralyn, that was amazing. It was so clear and succinct and such a celebration of Charles's range of creativity. And just, you know, if you are in the area of Bridgehampton, the show is only up till when? February?
At the end of February, so 2 weekends, this weekend and the following weekend.
Yeah.
And that'll be it.
But to see the works in person, because they are sculptures, is just extraordinary. And the textures and the wit, it's indescribable. So I know that some of Charles's friends and fellow artists are on here. So I would like to know if anyone would like to share any recollections of Charles. I am going to go down and mute everybody. But then if you would like to share, please do unmute yourself, okay? This way we won't have clickety clack in the background. A message is coming in. Let's see our messages, hold on. Kathy Bifulco, hi Kathy, says, I love Salty Dog too. And incredible career, thanks for making this available. Loved High Top also. Christine Lewandowski, love you, beautiful. I guess that was a personal note. And so we would really, really love to hear from people who knew Charles, because this is a tribute. It also is somewhat of it will become a historic document. So, and I'm not trying to put pressure, but what I'm trying to say is that we want to share because we want to remember the life of Charles and the work. So who would like to share? Any thoughts, any recollections at all, any funny stories? Walter, hi Walter. Walter is an East Hampton, New York City based artist. And can you unmute and tell us your thoughts, Walter?
Several. I've always enjoyed his work. I remember when he had a major show at Liz on Top in Sag Harbor. But one of the things that's a very fond memory that Eunice and I have is that Geralyn, we would go New Year's Eve, be dancing. And I remember you and Charles danced up a storm practically all night long. He had tremendous energy. He was so creative and bright. And another very coincidental thing, as he just showed that wonderful illustration that he lived at 35 Bethune Street.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, we were talking with Charles several years ago, and he said, yes, he lived at 35 Bethune Street. Well, guess what? Eunice and I are at this building called Westbeth, and one of its addresses is 55 Bethune Street. So that he was just, in essence, we never knew each other at that time during the 70s and 80s, but lo and behold, he was right down the street from us, just a couple of doors away from us. And so that's a funny, it actually, in a certain kind of a context, it falls into Charles' magical fantasy of creative, a kind of like a Dadaistic surrealism. It also makes me think of a contemporary out here, Bill King, who also had a wonderful sense of humor with his sculpture. And that Charles had, you know, and I found about, as you said, he's in these wonderful, fantastic collections. That's fantastic. I love it. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. And Walter Weissman and Eunice Golden, also two amazing East Hampton artists. So nice to hear from you. And let's see, Tara, would you like to share?
I would. I'd like to thank you, Joyce, for the beautiful presentation in the beginning and putting Charles's life into the context of the artist community out here. It's an important connection. And then followed by the lovely tribute with all his artwork. Geralyn, just lovely. And thank you both for doing this. It's been so hard through the whole pandemic, and the loss of Charles is particularly tragic obviously for everyone here. And the fact that, you know, we can't even gather properly, you know, to celebrate him. You did have a gathering, but it's sort of throughout all of this, it's just there's no closure like pre-COVID, you know what I mean? So every opportunity that we have to celebrate him is a great chance. So I just want to say thanks, and I'm happy to be here with everyone. I'm missing Charles a lot. I think about him and just can't believe he's gone. And I miss all of you who I know who are here on the call and hope to get together one day soon.
Tara, thank you so much. And Tara is also an amazing artist and art teacher, also located on the East End. So really, Tara, thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
And who else would like to share? Or who has any questions? Kathy, do you want to weigh in? By Fulco, do you want to weigh in on anything? And tell us also, where are you nowadays?
Yes, I am in Encinitas, California. It's in North County, San Diego.
Wow.
That's why I was delighted to get this invite. Thank you, Geralyn, because there's no way I'm going to be able to go to the White Room Gallery. And now I learn more about him than I ever knew. And although, you know, I never knew him well when he was alive, I want to thank you for letting me be in a show with him at Oshawa. That was an honor. So thank you. And I'm so sorry that he had to pass the way that he did. And it makes me sad all the time. Anyway, thank you. This was great. Thanks a lot.
Nice
Come to San Diego.
Oh, we will. We'll be there. We miss you, Kathy. Kathy also was
I miss you too. Thank you.
Artist and designer at Guildhall, multi-talented. So congratulations on your move. I know you wanted that for a while as well.
Well, Jeff Schnell is on the call, I can see, and he's from California. I think he might be somewhere. There he is.
And Jeff, let's say hello to Jeff.
Hey, Jeff. Oh, good to see you. You look great.
Jeff, okay, good. You're unmuted. So let's hear from Jeff.
Yeah, first I wanted to thank both of you for making such a wonderful presentation. There isn't a day that doesn't go by that I don't think of Charles in some way. He was a dear friend and like a brother to me. And we got together quite often. I knew him through many of the periods that Geralyn spoke about and saw the work. I remember watching him do some of the scrimshaw work and discussing a lot of things with him. He was so inspirational and so helpful to me. Always always on the positive spin, continuing whatever work I was doing. And it just, it will never leave me.
Thank
Very
you.
happy,
Thank
very
you.
happy with this.
Thank you.
Now, I live in Carlsbad, California.
Where do you live in California?
In Carlsbad, the sister town to Encinitas, right next to Encinitas.
Okay, so
Okay,
you
we'll
have
come,
to meet.
we're
you
coming
have
to
to
visit
meet
you two, okay?
Kathleen.
It's February, we'll be there.
Right next to me.
Love the
Charles
springs, but I
visited
like
me
it
twice.
better in the warm months. No, I'm just kidding. Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming on.
And one last thing, Charles visited me twice in Encinitas. And we had a wonderful, wonderful time.
I know, he told me all about it. I think he was even thinking about moving there.
Thank you both.
Thank you. And who else would like to share? Kathy? Let's find Katherine Jones.
Yep. Hi.
Hold on,
I'm
let me, are you, oh, you're not on camera, Kathy? Do you want to just speak?
Yeah, I am.
Let me
I am.
find you. Hold on before you start talking. Bear with me. I want to find you. Oh, there you are. Right there. Yeah.
Now, I wanted to thank you for this wonderful presentation. The piece at the beginning about the artist in Springs was beautiful, Joyce, and being a Springs resident myself, it was really lovely, lovely to see. And it was wonderful, Geralyn, your presentation of Charles's work. There's a lot of pieces that I've never seen, and they were just such a beautiful overview of his work. And he was such a wonderful man, and I quite often saw him on your boat. So to see that beautiful one with the sails on the boat was just gorgeous. It really reminded me of him. And I always think of Charles, his work was so incredible, but I always think of him as the artist that would stop me in my tracks at exhibitions. I just knew it, you know, his stuff would just make you go, woo. And I remember it was one of the big art shows in Bridgehampton once, that it was one of his bridal suite things,
Yeah.
bridal pieces, that it was with a big bridal dress with the tacks coming through it. And I was with two other friends, and we all stopped in our tracks at the same time, and we went, oh my God, look at this. It was amazing. And we all absolutely loved it. I mean, it's such an amazing, amazing piece that really spoke a lot about the perils of marriage. And I just went to see Company, the perils and joys of marriage, you know, but I just went to see Company this week on Broadway, and that's what that's all about as well. I kept thinking about Charles's Bridal Suite series when I was watching Company. So thank you so much. It was just a wonderful overview of his work, which is so amazing.
Thank you.
Kathy, thank you so much. So nice to see you. Kathy is also a Springs resident, and so nice to see you. And thank you for sharing also. And you're right, Kathy, that Bridal Suite in particular, there's one at the White Room where it has boxing gloves, and it's hilarious. Hilarious. They're like equally beautiful as they are slightly irreverent, Charles's work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what draws you in, because they're so aesthetically pleasing. And then it's like this edgy humor and this juxtaposition. So,
Right.
thank you. And who else would like to share or just say a few words? Anyone who maybe didn't know Charles, who has a question about his artwork or anything else? I'd like to, I could share, I think it's kind of a funny, I don't know if it's funny, but it was really, really striking. I was gifted by Geralyn a box of pencils from Charles's studio after he passed away. And it was this huge just box of, it was huge. It was like hundreds of colored pencils were in this box. And I used to teach before COVID. So I figured, oh, those will be really handy for the students. So thank you. But then there were no students because of COVID. So I had them in my basement all this time. And I actually felt like, I don't want to be dramatic, but I did kind of feel like Charles's spirit last night, because out of nowhere, someone who I, know through the community. She calls me, she goes, I need colored pencils. Do you have colored pencils? I said, come over, I have this box. So she comes over and she's like, how am I going to pick what I want? I said, let's sort them out. So we, Geralyn, spent an hour
saw the
in
photo.
rainbow color, sorting out these. He must have had 100 white pencils or whatever. But it was so weird as I'm sitting there, I go, this is the weirdest, most synchronistic thing. That this woman calls me and asks me about Charles's pencils the night before we're doing this Zoom program. I really did feel like maybe that is, I don't know, it's just subjective. Maybe that was a spirit coming through. I don't know. It drove the point home really about the legacy of artists. It's not about the pencils. To me, it's about the giving. And, you know, the spirit of community that we create here in the Springs and of course, other places in the world. And the spirit of giving of an artist that lasts way beyond the artist's lifetime in ways that we can't even imagine the impact that art really can have on others. I did want to mention something. The collection that's on display at the White Room, the proceeds, the Geralyn's profit of the proceeds will go to charity. And what are some of the charities, Geralyn?
Well, so far we've donated to Wings Over Haiti, which is a great charity started by Jonathan Glynn in building schools. He does it very economically. I think it costs like $1.50 a day to send a child to school and they get 2 meals. And obviously the way to get people to rise up over their situation is to educate them, and hopefully these people will be, carry the torch and improve the country, because Haiti, as you know, is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. So that charity, the charities I've so far selected are ones that Charles would donate artwork to. When they would have a benefit, he would contribute a piece, and so that's what I'm doing. Also, as everybody knows, Charles had parrots, and he had Martini, and then a couple of tattoos, and then Rio was the last parrot. So I've also included like a parrot rescue in the mix. But if anybody purchases a piece and they have a charity that's close to their heart, I would certainly be willing to consider putting them into the mix of the charities that we will be donating, the net proceeds of any artwork that sells. And it's just another way to create, positive impact from, his unfortunate and untimely death. And so to, pass it on and try to, make the world a little better.
And tell us about the Charles Waller Scholarship Fund.
Yeah, I'm starting that now. We have two small scholarships. So I'm actually just putting it together. They'll be given, the first 2 will be given to East Hampton High School students. I would like somebody to, the students who are interested in pursuing art in college, that they make a presentation of 2-3 pieces, and then we'll select a couple and give them some money for, whatever their art supplies. And again, as things hopefully sell, that will be expanded, but it's sort of in the early stages. So we have 2 there. And the other groups that we're donating to, I already have donated to actually, is the Ellen Hermanson Foundation, and the group that does Ellen's Run, and is an advocate for women with breast cancer. And
Unknown caller.
Hang on, let's do some housekeeping. Hold on. We're gonna mute everybody. Okay. So Geralyn, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and then just one more I want to mention is East End Hospice. So those groups have already received donations, and as hopefully the pool gets bigger and wider, they'll get more, or there'll be more groups added, more scholarships added. But I've just sort of started this, and this show at the White Room Gallery, step one of hopefully a year-long retrospective. I'm looking into other galleries. I'd like to continue showing Charles's artwork and hoping, for it to sell and then create more good in these, causes that I've, just mentioned.
And for the upcoming spring, are you planning on having the Oswald Hall Art Groove? And if so, would you display Charles's work there as well?
I'm right in the process of considering it. It's looking pretty good. And yes, I would like to, if there's room, as you know, in Art Groove, there's usually more people that want to be in it than wall space available. So that's still sort of in the preliminary stages, although it's looking pretty positive right now. We'll see. One thing at a time. I just got through the White Room show, and now I'm through this Zoom meeting, and we'll see where we go from there.
Well, thank you, Geralyn. Any questions? I'm happy to take everyone on a little glimpse of the outdoor property of the Pollock House. If you're in sunny California, you'll be reminded of no, it's beautiful here in the winter. I'm just joking around, because most of the people, I feel like I know most of you. So I'm happy to end this with a little outdoor tour and a glimpse of the barn. But before we do that, I want to thank everybody for coming and everyone for sharing. And a special, really big thanks to Geralyn Lewandoski, who has such a big heart and is so multifaceted creatively. And of course, we all will remember Charles and hold his art and his life dear in our heart, and take inspiration from his creativity and his expertise as an artist as well, his craft. So, and look for that find, right? Look for those lucky finds at an antique sale or a yard sale or at the recycling center. You never know where that's going to lead. So, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So you want to go outside with me, Geralyn?
Sure.
Okay.
Get our coats
Let's get
on.
our coats and we're going to go. And while we're doing this, any questions, closing thoughts? Okay. Geralyn's getting her coat. And what I did also want to mention, just by way of announcement, is we host our Zoom workshops from the Pollock House on a regular basis, and they're all free. We also have workshops, and we have many guest speakers coming up as well. So pkhouse.org. And Geralyn, would you like to announce your email if anybody wants to get in touch with you?
Yeah, it's my last name, Lewandowski22@optonline.net.
Okay. So let's take a look outside and see why so many artists came to the East End. Not only is it breathtakingly beautiful, but also it's in close proximity to New York City. So you have, you might say, the best of both worlds. There's the now famous Barn Studio behind us. And this is 1.5 acres of property that was purchased for $5,000. But it was very, very hard living when they first came out here. This is a view of Accabonac Creek. Those inlets, of course, go all the way out to Montauk. The barn was originally on that concrete platform, and Pollock and his buddies moved it here so as to not block this spectacular view. And this was an old farmhouse, which you see back there. And there was no central heat or plumbing. So here is the outhouse that Lee described that first year as, she said, it was tough. You can imagine, she was a city girl from Brooklyn. They come out here. There were 200 fishermen and farmers. And it was also really cold in the house. There was a story one time that Peggy Guggenheim came to visit. And it was so cold that the toilet water had iced over. Okay, so it was tough. But of course, they renovated the house and they fixed it up. And Pollock started to do quite well. And they were actually above the median income, the median middle class income at a certain point. Okay, so they rose from, you know, sometimes it's the myth of the starving artist. A lot of artists start out with very humble beginnings because they're willing to give everything up. But then all of these artists that we discussed really rose to making a good living. Okay, so it is chilly out here, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I
It's
think so.
cold. Let's go back in the barn. Any questions about anything?
It is a beautiful day today, although the temperature has dropped from earlier this morning when it was 54. Now it's probably about 35.
Everyone, we're going to sign off, and you are also always welcome to come back for a tour, which is more of a historic tour, if you want to learn more about the details of the stories behind these artist lives. So have a wonderful day, and thank you, everybody. So nice.
Thank you so much. That was
Give
wonderful.
Geralyn-
Thanks,
give
ladies.
Geralyn-
That was very nice, Joyce and Geralyn.
Thanks, it was great. It was great.
Geralyn-
Thank you.